My name is Robert Henderson. I'm 68 years old, and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I never thought my own son would introduce me as hired help, but what happened next taught him a lesson he'll never forget. I built Henderson Industrial Solutions from nothing. Started in a rented office above a hardware store in 1982, just me and a rotary phone. Manufacturing consultant work, helping factories optimize their production lines, cut waste, improve efficiency. Unglamorous stuff, the kind of work where you get your hands dirty, even when you're wearing a tie. 42 years later, I'm retired, majority shareholder. The company runs itself now, and it runs well, but I never advertised that. Never wore expensive watches or drove flashy cars. My Mercedes is 12 years old, runs perfectly. Why replace something that works? I raised my son, Marcus, to understand that. Character over status, integrity over image, work that matters over work that impresses. Tonight, Marcus asked me to drive him to his company's annual gala. His BMW was getting serviced, some recall on the fuel system. He needed a ride. I said yes without thinking twice. Thought it'd be nice, actually. Quality time, father and son. I dressed simply. Gray slacks, navy button-down, black leather shoes I've had since 2015. Polished, but nothing ostentatious. That's not who I am. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and the time in the comments. I'm curious who's listening to an old man's story at this hour, and if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. You'll want to see how this ends. We pulled out of my driveway around 6:30. The gala started at 7. Marcus was in the passenger seat, checking his phone every 30 seconds, adjusting his tie in the visor mirror, then his hair, then his tie again. You nervous? I asked. Just want everything to be right, he said, not looking at me. I glanced over. He was 34 years old, but in that moment, he looked like a teenager before prom. Anxious, fidgety. Something felt off. Marcus works for Caldwell & Cross Financial, big regional firm, wealth management, investment banking, corporate restructuring. He's been there 6 years, worked his way up to senior analyst, makes good money. I'm proud of that. Proud he earned it himself. We drove through downtown Charleston, past the old market, toward the waterfront. The hotel where the gala was being held sat right on the harbor, one of those restored historic buildings with columns and wrought iron balconies. Expensive, elegant. Marcus checked his reflection again in the side mirror as we slowed for a red light. You look fine, I said. He didn't respond. The light turned green. I eased forward, hands steady on the wheel. 40+ years of driving, and I've never had an accident, never even a fender bender. You learn to pay attention, to read the road, to anticipate what's coming. I wish I'd read my son that clearly. We turned onto the hotel's circular drive. Valets in burgundy vests stood at attention near the entrance. Luxury sedans idling. Men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns stepping out, laughing, handing off keys. Marcus sat up straighter, rolled his shoulders back. I watched his face change in the dashboard light, jaw tightening, expression smoothing into something practiced, professional. That's when I felt it. That knot in your stomach when you know something's wrong but can't name it yet. I pulled up near the valet stand, put the car in park. Marcus reached for the door handle, then hesitated, turned to me. Dad, he said quietly, maybe just stay near the car for a bit. I looked at him. What? I need to make a good impression tonight. You understand? I didn't understand. Marcus, I'm your father. Why would I? It's not like that. He forced a smile. It's just, you know how corporate people are. Appearances matter. Politics. I'll come find you in a bit, okay? The knot tightened. Are you ashamed of me? What? No. Dad, come on. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Don't make this weird. I'll see you inside. He got out, straightened his jacket. I walked toward the entrance without looking back. I sat there, engine still running, watching him disappear through the brass-framed doors. Stay near the car, like I was a staff, like I was the driver he'd hired for the evening. I turned off the engine, waved off the valet, parked the Mercedes myself in the guest lot, hands moving automatically while my mind tried to process what just happened. When I walked back toward the hotel entrance, I could see Marcus through the glass doors. He was already inside, shoulders back, that fake smile plastered across his face, shaking hands with someone, laughing too loud. He didn't look back. Not once. I stood there on the sidewalk, car keys in my hand, feeling suddenly invisible. And that's when I realized my son wasn't introducing me to his world. He was hiding me from it. I gave him everything, not just money, but values. I thought he understood what really mattered. Marcus's mother, Eleanor, died when he was 12. Aneurysm. She went to bed one Tuesday night and didn't wake up Wednesday morning. No warning, no time to prepare. I remember standing in our bedroom doorway, watching the paramedics work on her, knowing it was already too late. And I remember Marcus at the top of the stairs in his pajamas, watching me, waiting for me to tell him his mother was going to be okay. I couldn't tell him that, so I told him the truth instead. And then I held him while he cried. And then I made him breakfast the next morning, because that's what you do. You keep going. I never remarried. People asked. Well-meaning friends, Eleanor's sister, even my own mother before she passed. But I couldn't. Marcus needed stability, not adjustment. He needed a father who was present, not distracted by trying to build a new life, so I focused everything on him. The business was still growing back then. We'd landed a few major contracts, Michelin, BMW's South Carolina plant, some aerospace suppliers, good money, long hours. I'd leave the office at 6, pick Marcus up from after-school care, make dinner, help with homework, pack his lunch for the next day. Then I'd go back to work after he fell asleep. 3, 4 hours more. Financial projections, client proposals, bids. I did that for years. When Marcus turned 14, I sat him down and told him I was expanding the company, that it would mean more money, but also more of my time. I asked if he understood, if he'd be okay. He looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "Mom would want you to build something, Dad. I'll be fine." Smart kid. Perceptive. I expanded, hired a full staff, opened a second office in Columbia, then Greenville. Henderson Industrial Solutions became the name manufacturers called when they needed real expertise, not just some consultant reading from a playbook. But I never forgot what I told Marcus during those years. Character matters more than a corner office. I said it when he got cut from the JV basketball team and wanted to quit sports entirely. I said it when he got rejected from his first choice college. I said it when he called me from grad school, stressed about some group project where his teammates weren't pulling their weight. Character matters more than a corner office. Do the right thing, even when no one's watching. Treat people with respect, regardless of their title. Build something that lasts, not something that just looks good. He seemed to absorb it. He graduated top of his class from the Citadel, got his MBA from Clemson, landed the job at Caldwell and Cross without any help from me, or so I thought at the time. Truth is, I'd invested in Caldwell and Cross years earlier. Quiet investment. They were expanding their Charleston office, needed capital. My attorney brought me the opportunity. I put in $500,000, passive investor, no board seat, no involvement in operations, just returns. I never told Marcus. I didn't want him to think his success was because of my money. He needed to believe he'd earned it himself, and he had earned it. He worked brutal hours that first year, 80-hour weeks, weekends. He'd call me exhausted, venting about demanding clients and impossible deadlines, but he stuck with it, made senior analyst in 4 years. That's fast in that world. I was proud. I thought I'd raised him right. Though all those lessons had taken root, tonight was supposed to celebrate that success. Marcus had mentioned the gala a few weeks ago, his firm's big annual event. When he asked me to drive him, I thought he wanted me there, wanted to show me off maybe, introduce me to his colleagues and bosses. Look, this is my father. He built a company from nothing, raised me on his own. That's what I imagined. Instead, I got, stay near the car. I walked across the hotel parking lot, keys still in my hand, trying to make sense of it. Maybe he was just nervous. Big night, important people. Maybe I was reading too much into it, but that knot in my stomach hadn't loosened. If anything, it had gotten tighter. I pushed through the hotel's front entrance. Marble floors, high ceilings, soft lighting from chandeliers that probably cost more than my first car. A young woman in a black dress stood behind a registration table, checking names against a guest list. "Good evening," she said, smiling. "Name, please?" "Robert Henderson." She scanned the list, then frowned slightly. "I don't see you here, sir." "I'm with Marcus Henderson. He works for Caldwell and Cross." "Oh," she brightened. "You're his guest?" "I'm his father." Something in my tone made her pause. She checked the list again, then nodded. "Of course. Enjoy the evening." I walked past her into the ballroom. It was impressive. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, round tables with white linens and elaborate centerpieces. A jazz quartet played near the back, soft, sophisticated. Executives in tailored suits and women in elegant dresses mingled, holding champagne flutes, laughing at things that probably weren't that funny. I spotted Marcus immediately. He was across the room, near the bar, surrounded by a group of younger men and women, all dressed sharp, all holding drinks. Marcus was talking, gesturing with his champagne glass, and they were laughing. He was laughing too loud, the kind of laugh you use when you're trying to impress someone. I started walking toward him. Then Marcus saw me. His eyes widened, just for a second. Then his expression shifted, annoyance mixed with panic. He mouthed something. I couldn't make it out, but the message was clear. Not now. He turned back to his group, angling his body away from me. I stopped mid-stride, just stopped, right there in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by strangers, watching my son pretend he hadn't seen me. The sting was immediate, sharp, like missing a step going downstairs and feeling that jolt through your whole body. I stood there, trying to decide what to do. Approach him anyway? Leave? Wait? Then I saw someone else approaching Marcus's group. A tall man, silver hair, mid-60s maybe, expensive suit, tailored, not off the rack, confident posture, the kind of presence that makes people straighten up when he enters a room. Marcus saw him coming and his entire demeanor changed. The casual laugh disappeared. His shoulders went back, his smile became eager, almost desperate. He set down his champagne glass and extended his hand. I couldn't hear what they were saying from where I stood, but I didn't need to. I recognized that body language, that expression. This was someone important, someone Marcus needed to impress. This was his CEO. I stayed back, watched, waited. Marcus was nodding at whatever the man was saying, agreeing enthusiastically, laughing at the right moments, playing the part, and I realized something standing there in that ballroom, invisible among the crowd. I didn't know this version of my son. This wasn't the kid I'd raised, the one who helped me clean out Eleanor's closet without being asked, the one who sat with me in the garage on Saturday mornings while I changed the oil, asking questions about how engines worked. This was someone else, someone who cared more about appearances than authenticity, someone who'd learned the wrong lessons somewhere along the way, or maybe I'd failed to teach him the right ones. The jazz quartet finished their song. In the brief silence before the next one started, I heard Marcus's laugh again, sharp, performative. I should have turned around and left right then. I walked out, drove home, saved myself the embarrassment and heartache that was coming. But something told me to stay. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was hope that I was wrong about all this. Maybe it was just the need to know exactly who my son had become. Whatever it was, I'm glad I did. Because what happened next changed everything. I should have turned around and left, but something told me to stay, and I'm glad I did. I moved to the side of the ballroom, near one of the tall windows overlooking the harbor, found a spot where I could see Marcus clearly, but stay out of his direct line of sight. The jazz quartet started up again, something slow, melodic. Marcus was still with the silver-haired man. Their conversation looked serious now. The CEO was asking questions, and Marcus was answering quickly, nodding, gesturing, trying too hard. I've been in business for over 40 years. I know what desperation looks like. Two women in evening gowns drifted past me, their voices low. "That's Richard Caldwell," one said. "He doesn't usually come to these things. Marcus Henderson must be getting promoted," the other replied. Why else would Caldwell spend this much time with him? I watched Marcus's face. He was practically glowing, soaking in the attention. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne. I took a glass, more for something to hold than anything else. I don't drink much anymore. Makes me tired. Richard Caldwell, the CEO, clapped Marcus on the shoulder, said something that made Marcus laugh. Then Caldwell glanced around the room, scanning the crowd. His gaze landed on me briefly, then moved on. I was just another guest to him. Nobody. Marcus followed Caldwell's gaze, saw me standing by the window. For a moment, our eyes met. I raised my glass slightly, a small gesture, acknowledging him. Marcus's expression tightened. Then he looked away, said something to Caldwell. The CEO nodded, and they started walking, not toward me, but across the ballroom toward a group of older executives near the stage. Marcus didn't glance back. I sipped the champagne. It was good, expensive, wasted on this crowd probably. Most of them were drinking to be seen, not because they cared about the taste. A man near me was talking too loudly about a fishing trip to the Bahamas. His wife looked bored. Another couple was arguing in hushed tones about whether they should stay for dinner or leave early. A young man in a suit too big for him stood alone near the hors d'oeuvres table, plate piled high, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I understood that feeling. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Marcus worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, laughing, schmoozing. He was good at it. Natural. I'd never seen this side of him before. The CEO stayed nearby, not always directly next to Marcus, but close enough that their paths kept crossing. Marcus would find excuses to drift back into Caldwell's orbit, ask a question, make a comment, keep himself visible. I stayed by the window, watching, invisible. A woman in a red dress approached me once, smiling politely. "Are you with Caldwell and Cross?" "No," I said. "I'm here with my son." "Oh, how nice. Which one is he?" I almost pointed Marcus out. Almost. But something stopped me. "He's around somewhere," I said instead. She nodded and moved on, losing interest. The jazz quartet took a break. A man in a tuxedo stepped up to the microphone on stage and welcomed everyone. Started talking about the company's successful year, record profits, new clients, expansion plans. The crowd applauded at the right moments. Marcus stood near the front, hands clasped, listening intently. Richard Caldwell stood 2 people to his left. The man at the microphone finished his opening remarks, then said something that made my chest tighten. "And now, I'd like to invite our CEO, Richard Caldwell, to say a few words." Applause. Caldwell walked to the stage, shook the man's hand, and took the microphone. He was comfortable up there. Confidence. He talked about vision and growth, about the team, about the importance of people. Our greatest asset, he called them. I watched Marcus watching him, hanging on every word. Then Caldwell said something that made the room chuckle. "Now, before we sit down for dinner, I want to take a moment to personally thank some of the individuals who made this year possible." He started listing names, calling people out. Each person received polite applause. Marcus's posture shifted. Anticipation, hope. Caldwell called out 5 names. Marcus wasn't one of them. I saw the disappointment flash across his face, brief, controlled, but there. Then Caldwell scanned the room and said, "Marcus Henderson, where are you?" Marcus's head snapped up. He raised his hand slightly. "Here, sir. Come on up here for a minute." The room turned to look. Marcus walked toward the stage, trying to appear humble, but failing to hide the pride in his stride. He climbed the steps, shook Caldwell's hand, stood beside him under the lights, and that's when everything changed. My own son looked me in the eye and erased 34 years of fatherhood in 4 words. "Just my driver." Richard Caldwell stood at the microphone, hand resting on Marcus's shoulder. "Marcus has been instrumental in our expansion into the low-country manufacturing sector," he said. "His analysis and client relationships have brought in over $12 million in new business this year alone." The room applauded. Marcus tried to look humble, but I could see the pride radiating off him. "Marcus," Caldwell continued, "you're exactly the kind of leader we need as we grow." "Thank you." More applause. Marcus shook Caldwell's hand, descended the stage steps, and returned to his spot near the front. Several colleagues patted his back, congratulated him. The speeches continued. 2 more executives were recognized. Then Caldwell wrapped up, thanked everyone for coming, and invited the crowd to enjoy dinner. The room began shifting, people moving toward their assigned tables, conversations resuming. The jazz quartet started playing again. Caldwell stepped off the stage and immediately began working his way through the crowd, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries. He moved with purpose, though, not aimless mingling. He was heading somewhere specific, toward me. I stayed where I was, by the window. I watched him approach. Marcus was talking to someone near the bar, his back to both of us. Caldwell stopped a few feet away, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied my face. He looked like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then he smiled, warm, genuine. "Excuse me," he said, extending his hand. "I apologize if this is forward, but you look familiar. Have we met?" I shook his hand, firm grip. "We have, Mr. Caldwell, though it's been some time." His eyes widened slightly. "I thought so. I'm terrible with names sometimes, but faces." He paused, still searching my expression. "Forgive me, but where do I know you from?" Before I could answer, Marcus appeared at Caldwell's elbow. He must have seen us from across the room. His face had gone pale. "Mr. Caldwell," Marcus said quickly, voice too bright. "There you are. I wanted to introduce you to Sarah Brennan. She's been doing fantastic work on the Greenville portfolio." Caldwell glanced at Marcus, then back at me. "Just a moment, Marcus. I was speaking with this gentleman." Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not embarrassment, no shame, fear. "Oh," Marcus said, forcing a laugh. That's just my driver, sir. Car service. I didn't want to deal with parking tonight." The words hit me like a fist to the chest. "Just my driver." Caldwell's brow furrowed. He looked at me again, more closely now. "Your driver?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said, gripping Caldwell's elbow. "Now, about Sarah. She's right over there, and I really think you should meet her before dinner starts. She's been wanting to discuss the merger strategies we talked about last month." Caldwell hesitated. His gaze moved between Marcus and me. Something flickered in his expression. Confusion, maybe suspicion. "He looks very familiar," Caldwell said slowly. "Common face, I guess." Marcus tugged gently on Caldwell's arm. "Sir, please. Sarah's waiting." I stood there silent. Every instinct told me to speak up, to correct the lie, to say I'm his father. I raised him. I sacrificed everything for him, but I didn't. I wanted to see what Marcus would do, how far he'd go. Caldwell glanced at me one more time, then nodded reluctantly. "Of course, lead the way." Marcus practically dragged him toward the bar, where a young woman in a black dress stood holding a wine glass. He didn't look back at me, not once. I stood by the window, champagne glass still in my hand, feeling like I'd been erased. Around me, people laughed and talked. The jazz quartet played. Waiters circulated with trays of hors d'oeuvres. The harbor lights glittered through the glass behind me, and I was invisible, just the driver, not the man who'd held Marcus's hand at his mother's funeral, not the man who'd taught him to ride a bike, to tie a tie, to balance a checkbook, not the man who'd worked 80-hour weeks so Marcus could go to private school, not the man who'd sat through every parent-teacher conference, every basketball game, every graduation, just the driver. 34 years of fatherhood reduced to 4 words. For 60 seconds, I stood there wondering if I'd wasted 34 years. Then, everything changed. The crowd moved around me like water around a stone. Executives in expensive suits, women in designer dresses, all of them networking, laughing, performing. None of them noticed the older man in simple clothes, standing alone by the window. I might as well have been furniture. I thought about Eleanor. If she were alive, would Marcus have done this? Would he have dared? She would have been horrified. Eleanor believed in kindness above all else. She used to say, "You can be successful and cruel, or successful and kind. Only one of those leaves you with anything real at the end." Marcus must have forgotten that. Or maybe I failed to teach it properly after she died. Maybe that was it. Maybe I'd failed him. I gave him everything. financial security, education, opportunities. But maybe I'd given him too much, made things too easy, left him hungry for validation I'd never required myself. Or maybe I'd given him too little, too focused on work, too absent during the critical years. Maybe he grew up feeling like he had something to prove because I was never there to tell him he'd already proven enough. I didn't know anymore. Across the room, Marcus was talking animatedly with Caldwell and the young woman, Sarah. He was gesturing, smiling, performing. He looked confident, successful. He looked like a stranger. I could leave, walk out right now, get in the Mercedes, drive home, spare us both further embarrassment. He'd probably prefer that. Easier for him if I just disappeared, became truly invisible instead of just treated that way. I set the champagne glass on a nearby table, untouched except for that one sip. I'd go, quietly, let Marcus have his evening without the complication of a father who didn't fit the image he wanted to project. I turned toward the exit. That's when I saw Caldwell break away from Marcus's conversation. He said something brief to Marcus and Sarah, then started walking, not toward another group of executives, not toward the bar or the stage, toward me. His stride was purposeful, direct. His expression is serious. My heart started pounding, not from fear, from something else. Anticipation maybe, or dread. Marcus saw Caldwell moving away and called after him. "Sir, is everything all right?" Caldwell didn't respond, just kept walking, straight to me. He stopped 3 feet away, studying my face again. Up close, I could see his eyes, sharp, intelligent, the kind of eyes that miss nothing. "Forgive me," he said quietly, "but I can't shake the feeling that we've met, and not casually. This is going to bother me all night if I don't figure it out." Behind him, Marcus was watching. His expression had shifted from confident to anxious. He started moving toward us, weaving through the crowd. "We have met," I said, "about 15 years ago." Caldwell's eyes narrowed. Then it widened. "Henderson," he breathed. "Robert Henderson?" I nodded. His face transformed. Shock first, then something like joy. Then, when he glanced back at Marcus, now just a few feet away, something darker, understanding. The moment he said my name, I saw my son's entire world about to collapse. "My God," Caldwell said, voice low. "Mr. Henderson, what are you doing here?" Marcus reached us, slightly out of breath. "Mr. Caldwell, is everything okay? You called him your driver," Caldwell said, still looking at me. Not a question, a statement. The color drained from Marcus's face. Marcus started, then stopped. He looked at me, eyes pleading, begging me to play along. I said nothing. Caldwell turned to Marcus slowly. "This man," he said, his voice carefully controlled, "is Robert Henderson." "I know, sir. He's my father. I can explain." "Your father." Caldwell's expression hardened. "Your father. And you introduced him as your driver?" People nearby had started to notice the tension. Conversations quieted. Heads turned. Marcus's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Sir, please, not here. I wanted tonight to be about work, about professionalism. I didn't want..." "Didn't want what?" Caldwell asked. "Didn't want anyone to know you came from something real? From someone who actually built something?" Marcus flinched. I stood there, watching my son squirm. Part of me wanted to step in, to smooth this over, to protect him the way I'd protected him his whole life. But another part, a larger part, wanted to see this play out. Caldwell looked at me again, his expression shifting to something like reverence. "Mr. Henderson, I apologize. If I'd known you were here, you would have been seated at the head table. You should be on that stage, not..." He gestured vaguely at the window where I'd been standing. "Not hiding in corners. I wasn't invited," I said quietly. "It was just a ride." The words hung in the air. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were wet. "We need to talk," Caldwell said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He wasn't speaking to Marcus. He was speaking to me. Now, privately, he gestured toward a door near the back of the ballroom, probably led to a conference room or office. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but Caldwell held up a hand. "Not you," Caldwell said. "Mr. Henderson and I have business to discuss." The dismissal was absolute, final. Marcus stood there, frozen, as Caldwell placed a gentle hand on my elbow and guided me toward the door. I glanced back once, saw Marcus standing alone in the middle of the ballroom, executives watching, whispering, his carefully constructed evening crumbling around him. He met my eyes. I didn't smile, didn't frown, just looked at him. Then I turned and followed Caldwell through the door. I built an empire in silence so my son could build his own voice, and he used that voice to deny I existed. The door closed behind us, muffling the jazz music and conversation. We were in a small meeting room, conference table, leather chairs, windows overlooking the harbor. Quiet, private. Caldwell gestured to a chair. I sat. He sat across from me, leaning forward, hands clasped. "Does your son know who you are?" he asked. "He knows I ran a business," I said. "He doesn't know the details." Caldwell stared at me. "The details? I didn't advertise. Never saw the point." "Mr. Henderson," Caldwell's voice was careful, almost gentle. "You're not just a man who ran a business. You're the majority shareholder of Henderson Industrial Solutions. You built one of the most respected manufacturing consulting firms in the Southeast. You personally recommended me for this CEO position when our board was interviewing candidates 12 years ago." I nodded. I remembered. Young guy, sharp mind, good instincts. I'd known he'd do well. "You've been our silent partner for over a decade," Caldwell continued. "Your quarterly reports have guided our entire manufacturing division. Your investment gave us the capital to expand when banks wouldn't touch us. He stopped, choosing his words. "You're one of the most influential people in this industry." I preferred to stay quiet, I said. "Why?" "Because influence doesn't require recognition." Caldwell sat back, studying me. "And Marcus doesn't know any of this?" I wanted him to succeed on his own merit, not because of my name or my connections. He needed to believe he'd earned it himself. "He has earned it," Caldwell said. "He's a good analyst, smart, hard-working, but—" He paused. "That doesn't excuse what he did tonight?" "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. He called you his driver." Caldwell's voice carried quiet outrage. "The man who gave me my career called you his driver." The weight of that statement settled between us. Outside the window, boats moved slowly across the dark water, their lights reflecting on the surface. The harbor looked peaceful, calm. Inside this room, everything had shifted. "What do you want me to do?" Caldwell asked. I looked at him. "Nothing. This is between Marcus and me." "With respect, sir, that's not entirely true. He made this public. He disrespected you in front of my entire company. In my house. He meant the gala, the event, his responsibility. That reflects on the culture we're building here, on the values we claim to uphold." "What values are those?" I asked. "Integrity, respect, character." He said the words like they mattered, like they weren't just corporate buzzwords. I thought about that. Character matters more than a corner office. Had I taught Marcus that? Or just said it? "Mr. Henderson," Caldwell said quietly, "I owe you everything. This position, this company's success, my career, it all traces back to you. And tonight, your own son treated you like you were invisible." "Maybe I was too invisible," I said. "Maybe that's the problem." Caldwell shook his head. "Humility is admirable, but there's a difference between humility and letting people erase you." Through the closed door, I could hear the muffled sounds of the gala continuing, dinner being served, conversations, laughter. Marcus was out there somewhere, probably panicking, probably realizing that his careful facade had just shattered. "What happens now?" I asked. Caldwell leaned forward again. "That depends on you, sir. But I think it's time we had a conversation with your son, a real one, and I think it's time he learned exactly who you are." I sat there, looking at this man I'd helped years ago, this CEO who still remembered, who still cared about debts and respect and doing the right thing, and I thought about Marcus, about the boy who'd held my hand at his mother's funeral, about the man who'd just called me his driver. "All right," I said finally, "let's talk to him." Sometimes the hardest lesson a father can teach is the one that hurts the most. Caldwell stood, smoothing his suit jacket. I remained seated, hands resting on the conference table, looking out at the harbor lights. "Mr. Henderson," he said carefully, "with your permission, I'd like to address this. Your son needs to understand what he's done. I looked up at him. Richard, I appreciate that, but I don't want to humiliate him. I understand. Caldwell moved to the window, standing beside me. But consider this. If I let this slide, what am I teaching every young employee out there? Is disrespecting a family acceptable as long as it serves your career? That legacy doesn't matter? That you can erase the people who built you? I thought about that, about all the times I'd told Marcus that character matters, about how easily he'd discarded those lessons tonight. You taught me something 12 years ago, Caldwell continued. When I was interviewing for this position, I was nervous, inexperienced. The board had concerns. You pulled me aside and said, integrity isn't optional. It's the foundation. Without it, everything else collapses. I remembered that conversation. Young man, promising, but untested. He'd needed to hear it. I've built my leadership on that principle, Caldwell said. If I ignore what happened tonight, I'm a hypocrite. Worse, I'm telling Marcus that integrity is optional when it's convenient. He was right. I knew he was right, but Marcus was still my son. The instinct to protect him ran deep, even now, especially now. I won't humiliate him, Caldwell said, reading my hesitation, but he needs to understand who you are, what he did, and that there are people watching who know the difference between ambition and betrayal. I stood slowly, my knees stiff from sitting. All right, I said, but we do this with dignity, his and mine. Caldwell nodded. Of course. He opened the door. The sounds of the gala rushed back in, music, laughter, the clinking of silverware on china. Dinner had been served. People were eating, drinking, networking. We walked back into the ballroom together, side by side. I spotted Marcus immediately. He was at a table near the middle of the room, sitting with several colleagues. His plate was untouched. He was staring at it, not eating, while the people around him talked and laughed. He looked up as we approached, saw us walking toward him together, Caldwell and me, unified. His face was drained of color. He knew. Somehow he knew. The people at his table noticed us approaching. Conversations quieted. One woman glanced between Marcus and us, sensing tension. Marcus stood slowly, his napkin falling from his lap to the floor. He didn't pick it up. Marcus, Caldwell said, his voice even, professional. Could you join us for a moment? It wasn't a request. Marcus nodded, throat working as he swallowed. He stepped away from the table, moving toward us like a man walking to his execution. The nearby tables had noticed now, heads turning, whispers starting. We stood in a small clearing between tables, the three of us. The jazz quartet was on break. In the relative silence, Caldwell's voice would carry. He'd planned that, I realized. Timed it. Marcus, Caldwell said, loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear clearly. You introduced this man as your driver. Is that correct? Marcus's eyes darted to me, then back to Caldwell. Sir, I can explain. Is that correct? Caldwell repeated. Calm. Measured. Yes, Marcus whispered. But I didn't mean. This is Robert Henderson, Caldwell said, each word deliberate. Majority shareholder of Henderson Industrial Solutions, one of the most respected figures in southeastern manufacturing, the man who personally recommended me for this CEO position 12 years ago. He paused. Your father. The conversations at nearby tables stopped completely. Silverware ceased clinking. People turned in their chairs. Marcus stood frozen, his face transitioning from pale to crimson. The flush started at his collar and spread upward. Someone at a nearby table whispered, "Oh my God." Another voice, male, slightly awed. That's Henderson? From Henderson Industrial? A woman's voice. He called his own father his driver? Marcus heard them. I saw him flinch with each whisper. He looked at me, eyes pleading, begging me to fix this, to make it stop. I said nothing, just looked at him, let him feel the weight of what he'd done. Watching my son's facade crumble in front of his peers, I felt no satisfaction, only sadness for what he'd become. More people were noticing now. The whispers spread outward like ripples. Executives at distant tables craning their necks to see what was happening. The entire ballroom seemed to lean in our direction. Marcus's hands trembled at his sides. He opened his mouth, closed it. opened it again. No words came. A man at the table behind us, older, gray-haired, expensive suit, leaned toward his companion. Henderson Industrial Solutions consulted on our Birmingham facility expansion. Best manufacturing analysis we've ever received. That's him? His companion, a woman in her 50s, responded quietly but not quietly enough. And his own son pretended not to know him? Marcus heard. His shoulders hunched slightly, like he was trying to make himself smaller, invisible. The irony wasn't lost on me. Caldwell stood perfectly still, hands clasped in front of him, not gloating, not theatrical, just waiting, giving Marcus the space to respond. But Marcus seemed incapable of speech. His mouth worked silently. His eyes were wet now, tears forming but not falling. "Marcus," Caldwell said, his voice softer now, not harsh, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "I need to understand something." Marcus looked up at him, desperate for any lifeline. "Are you confused about who your father is?" Caldwell asked. "Or are you ashamed of where you came from?" The question landed like a physical blow. Simple, binary, devastating. Confused or ashamed. There was no third option, no escape route, no way to spin this into something innocent or forgivable. The surrounding tables were completely silent now. 30, maybe 40 people watching this unfold, waiting for Marcus's answer. Marcus looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time all evening, he seemed to actually see me, and I saw him. Not the 34-year-old senior analyst trying to impress his CEO, not the young professional desperate to belong. I saw the 12-year-old boy at his mother's funeral, standing beside me in an ill-fitting suit, holding my hand so tightly it hurt. That boy had been proud to be my son, proud to stand next to me, proud to tell anyone who'd listen. "That's my dad." Where did that boy go? When did pride become shame? "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered. The words came out automatic, reflexive, the kind of apology you give when you're caught, not when you're actually contrite. Caldwell heard it too. I could see it in his expression, the disappointment. He nodded slowly. "Sorry to whom, Marcus?" Marcus blinked. "What? To whom are you apologizing? Me for lying in front of my company? Your colleagues for deceiving them? Or your father for denying his existence?" Each question was a scalpel, precise, surgical, cutting away the easy excuses and forcing Marcus to confront the actual wound. Marcus's breathing was shallow now. His hands had gone from trembling to shaking. One of his colleagues, a young woman at his table, looked away, embarrassed for him. "I don't," Marcus started, then stopped. His voice broke. "I don't know." "Then figure it out," Caldwell said quietly. "Because until you know who you've wronged and why, the apology doesn't mean anything." He glanced at me, and I saw something in his eyes. A question, asking permission, asking if I wanted him to continue, or if I wanted to step in. I thought about what came next, about humiliation versus education, about punishment versus redemption, about whether I wanted my son destroyed or rebuilt. That single question did what 30 years of parenting couldn't. It made my son look in the mirror. I stepped forward, placed my hand on Marcus's shoulder. He flinched at the touch, then went very still. "Richard," I said, looking at Caldwell, "thank you for your loyalty, for your integrity, but I'd like to speak with my son privately now." Caldwell studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, Mr. Henderson." He glanced at Marcus. "We'll talk Monday morning. My office, 8 a.m. The words carried weight. This wasn't over professionally. Marcus would face consequences beyond this moment. Marcus nodded mutely. Caldwell stepped back, giving us space. The crowd of onlookers began to disperse slowly, conversations resuming in hushed tones, but eyes kept darting back to us. This would be office gossip for weeks. I guided Marcus toward the side of the ballroom, away from the tables, toward a quiet alcove near the service entrance. He walked stiffly, like a condemned man. We stopped in the alcove, relative privacy. The jazz quartet had started playing again, something slow, melancholy. Marcus stood with his back to the wall, head down. His hands were still shaking. "Dad," he started, voice thick. "I don't know what I was thinking. Everyone here is so successful, so polished, and you wanted to belong. I said gently. He looked up, surprised by the kindness in my voice. You wanted to fit in, I continued, to be seen as one of them, to not be the kid from Charleston who worked his way up. You wanted to be the young executive who belonged here naturally, without history, without baggage. Marcus's eyes were wet. He blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. I understand that, I said. I do. The pressure to prove yourself, the fear that people will see you as less than, the constant worry that you're an imposter and everyone's about to figure it out. Yes, he whispered. Exactly that. I stepped closer, kept my hand on his shoulder. But Marcus, listen to me. You can't build a life on shame. Not me. Not of where you came from. Not of yourself. A tear escaped, running down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. You think denying me makes you more legitimate, I said. But it does the opposite. It makes you hollow. It makes you someone who's so insecure about his worth that he has to erase his own foundation to feel stable. I'm sorry, he said again. But this time it sounded different. Less automatic, more broken. Who taught you to tie your shoes? I asked quietly. He blinked, confused by the shift. You did. Who taught you to drive? You. Who sat with you in the hospital when you broke your arm in 8th grade? Who helped you write your college essays? Who talked you through your first heartbreak, your first job rejection, your doubts about grad school? You, Marcus whispered. It was always you. Then why am I not good enough to stand next to tonight? The question hit him like I'd slapped him. He made a sound, half sob, half gasp. His legs seemed to give out slightly, and he leaned harder against the wall. I don't know, he said, tears flowing freely now. I don't know, Dad. I've been so afraid I don't actually deserve any of this, that everyone will realize I'm not as smart or talented as they think, that I'm just faking it. So you decided to fake your entire life, including your father? He covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. I stood there, watching my son break apart, watching 34 years of confidence and competence crumble into the insecure boy underneath. And despite everything, despite the hurt, the betrayal, the public humiliation, I still wanted to fix it, to fix him. That's what fathers do. I could have destroyed him at that moment. Instead, I chose to rebuild him. Marcus lowered his hands slowly. His eyes were red, face blotchy. He looked young, vulnerable. I'm ashamed, he said quietly. Not of you, of myself, of what I did. I know. No, he shook his head. You don't. Dad, I spent this entire week planning how tonight would go, what I'd wear, what I'd say, who I'd talk to. I choreographed every moment. His voice cracked, and the only thing I didn't plan for was you, my own father, because I decided you didn't fit the image I wanted to project. I said nothing. Let him continue. I told myself it was strategic, that it was just business, that you'd understand. He laughed bitterly. But the truth is, I was embarrassed. You dress simply. You drive an old car. You don't talk about money or success or achievements. And I thought that made you small. The honesty cut deeper than the original betrayal. But you're not small, Marcus continued, wiping his face with his sleeve. You're the biggest person I know. You built something real, something that matters. And I'm the one who's small. I'm the one who measures worth in suits and cars and job titles. Marcus, I called you my driver, he said, voice breaking again. My driver, like you were a staff, like 34 years of sacrifice meant nothing. I pulled him toward me. He resisted for a second, then collapsed against my shoulder, sobbing, full, body-shaking sobs. I held him, let him cry, the way I'd held him the night his mother died, the way I'd held him through every hurt and disappointment and failure. The jazz music played softly behind us. People walked past occasionally, glancing over with sympathy or curiosity before moving on. I love you, I said quietly into his ear. That hasn't changed. That won't change. How can you not hate me? Because you're my son, and because I remember who you used to be, who you still are, underneath all this fear. He pulled back, looking at me. What do I do now? You rebuild, I said. You figure out who you want to be, not who you think impresses other people, but who you actually want to be when you look in the mirror. I don't know if I can face everyone Monday. You will, because that's what men do. We face our mistakes. We own them. We learn from them. He nodded slowly, unconvinced, but trying. And Marcus? I squeezed his shoulder. You stop measuring yourself against everyone else's highlight reel. You build something real, something you're actually proud of, not something that just looks good from the outside, like you did, like I tried to do. I wasn't perfect either. I worked too much, missed things, let pride keep me from asking for help when I needed it. I paused, but I never pretended to be something I wasn't, and I never sacrificed the people I loved for appearances. He took a shaky breath. I'm going to make this right. I know. With Caldwell, with my colleagues, with you. Start with yourself, I said. Figure out who you are. The rest will follow. We stood there for another moment, father and son in a quiet alcove while a party continued around us. Then Marcus straightened, wiping his face one more time. Can I ask you something? Anything. Will you stay? For dinner? Let me introduce you properly to people. I looked at him, saw the hope in his eyes, the desperate need to begin making amends immediately. Not tonight, I said gently. Tonight you need to sit with what happened. I really feel it. Tomorrow we can talk about moving forward. He looked disappointed, but nodded. Okay. But Marcus, I'm proud of you. He looked up sharply. What? How can you? For breaking, for crying, for telling the truth just now. I smiled slightly. That took more courage than anything you've done in this ballroom tonight. He managed a small, broken smile in return. Come on, I said. Let's get you cleaned up. Then I'm going home. We walked toward the restroom together, and for the first time all evening, my son walked beside me instead of in front of me. It was a start. I didn't need him to be ashamed of his mistake. I needed him to understand why he made it. We stood in the restroom, Marcus at the sink, splashing cold water on his face, me leaning against the counter, watching him in the mirror. The bathroom was empty except for us. Marble fixtures, soft lighting, the kind of place where wealthy people composed themselves between networking sessions. Marcus dried his face with a hand towel, then stared at his reflection. Red eyes, blotchy skin, the carefully constructed image from earlier, completely shattered. Dad, he said quietly, still looking at himself, do you know why what I did hurt you? I considered the question. He was trying to understand. That was something. Tell me what you think, I said. He turned to face me. Because I was ashamed of you. Because I treated you like you weren't good enough. I shook my head slowly. No, son, that's not it. He frowned, confused. What hurt wasn't that you were ashamed of me, I said. It's that you were ashamed of yourself. He started to protest, but I held up a hand. You thought being my son, being connected to me, would make you less impressive, that my presence would diminish your accomplishments, that people would look at you differently if they knew where you came from. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. His shoulders sagged slightly. That's it, isn't it? I asked gently. You've been carrying around this fear that you're not self-made enough, not impressive enough on your own. So you tried to erase the foundation you were built on. He leaned back against the sink, arms crossed over his chest. Defensive posture, but his face showed recognition, truth landing. Everything you've achieved, I continued, your degree, your job, your success, those are yours. You earned them, but they came from somewhere, Marcus. From values, work ethic, sacrifice, from watching your mother die and learning that life is short and precious, from seeing me work brutal hours and understanding what commitment looks like. I moved closer, making sure he heard every word. Denying that doesn't make you self-made. It makes you ungrateful. The word hung in the air between us. Ungrateful. Marcus flinched like I'd struck him. That's not, I never meant, I know what you meant. You meant to protect yourself, to build an image that felt safer than the truth. But that's not strength, son. That's cowardice. His eyes filled with tears again. He blinked them back, jaw tight. I taught you that character matters more than a corner office, I said. Do you remember? He nodded. Tonight, you chose the office. You chose appearances and status, and the approval of people who don't actually know you, and you sacrificed me to get it. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know you are, but sorry isn't enough. You need to understand what you almost threw away. Not just me, yourself, the person you could be if you stopped measuring your worth by other people's standards. Marcus pushed off the sink, pacing the small space. 3 steps, turn, 3 steps back. I don't know how to fix this. You fix it by changing. Not overnight, not with grand gestures, but day by day, choice by choice. You rebuild who you are from the ground up. He stopped pacing, looking at me. Will you help me? The question was so young, so vulnerable, like the boy asking me to help him with his math homework, or teach him to shave, or explain why his mother had to die. Yes, I said. But Marcus, I can't do the work for you. I can guide you. I can tell you when you're off course. But is it actually changing? That's on you. He nodded slowly. Okay. We stood there in silence for a moment. The muffled sounds of the gala filtered through the door. Music, conversation, the clink of glasses. Out there, people were still networking, still performing, still playing the game Marcus had been so desperate to win. In here, we were just a father and son, trying to find their way back to each other. Forgiveness I could give him instantly. Trust, that would take time. And proof. Marcus checked his reflection one more time, making sure he looked presentable. The red had faded from his eyes somewhat. He still looked rough, but better. Dad, he said, not looking at me. Can I ask you something? Of course. After Mom died, he paused, choosing his words. Was I enough? Was raising me alone? Was it what you wanted? The question caught me off guard. I'd never considered that he might have wondered. Marcus, look at me. He turned. After your mother died, I was lost, I said. Completely lost. The woman I loved was gone. The future we'd planned disappeared overnight. I woke up every morning in an empty bed, in a house that felt like a museum of a life that was over. He looked stricken, like he hadn't expected such raw honesty. But then I'd hear you moving around in your room, I continued, getting ready for school. And I'd remember, I still had a purpose. I still had something worth living for. You weren't a burden, son. You were my reason. His chin trembled. He bit his lip, fighting tears. Those years raising you alone, working during the day, coming home to make you dinner, helping with homework, trying to be both parents. Those were the hardest years of my life, but they were also the most meaningful, because everything I did mattered. It was building something real, building you. I didn't know, Marcus whispered. You weren't supposed to know. You were a kid. You needed stability, not a father falling apart. So I held it together for you. And along the way, holding it together for you, taught me how to hold it together for myself. A tear escaped down Marcus's cheek. He wiped it away quickly. That's why tonight hurt so much, I said quietly. Not because you embarrassed me, but because you treated the most important thing I've ever built, you, like it was something to hide, like raising you was something I should be ashamed of, instead of proud of. Dad, can I forgive you? I asked. Yes, I already have. But Marcus, forgiveness isn't the same as trust. Forgiveness is a gift. Trust is earned. He nodded slowly. Tonight you revealed something about your character, I continued. A willingness to prioritize perception over truth, to sacrifice integrity for approval. That's not who I raised you to be. I know. And if you stay on that path, if you keep building your life on appearances instead of substance, you'll lose more than me. You'll lose yourself. You'll become a hollow man in an expensive suit, impressive from the outside and empty on the inside. Marcus sank onto the small bench near the wall, put his head in his hands. I don't want to be that, he said, voice muffled. Then don't be. Choose differently. Every single day make the choice to be real instead of impressive. He looked up at me. How long will it take? To rebuild trust? I considered that. I don't know. Months, maybe. Years. That depends on you, on whether you actually change or just feel bad for a while and then slip back into old patterns. I'll change, he said firmly. I swear. Swearing doesn't mean anything. Action means something. Consistency means something. Becoming the kind of man who wouldn't dream of denying his father. That means something. He stood. Then that's who I'll become. I searched his face, looking for signs this was just an emotional reaction. But I saw something else. Determination. Resolution. Maybe this would stick. Maybe it wouldn't. Time would tell. Come on, I said. Let's get back out there. He asked when we'd be okay. I told him that was the wrong question. The right question was, who will you become? We walked out of the restroom together. The gala was still in full swing. Dessert had been served. Small plates of chocolate torte and creme brulee on the tables. The jazz quartet played softly. People glanced at us as we emerged. Some quickly looked away. Others stared openly. The whispers had spread. Everyone knew what had happened. Marcus noticed. His jaw tightened, but he kept walking. What do I do now? He asked quietly. I appreciated the question. Not, when will this blow over? Or, how do I save face? He was asking how to move forward, how to do the right thing. First, I said, you apologize to James Caldwell, not for embarrassing yourself, not for causing a scene, for disrespecting me in his presence and violating the values he's trying to build in this company. Marcus nodded. Okay, then Monday, you go back to work. You do your job with integrity. No shortcuts. No pretending to be something you're not. Just honest work. That's it. That's everything. Integrity isn't a grand gesture, Marcus. It's 1,000 small choices. Showing up, doing what you said you'd do, treating people with respect, being honest even when it costs you. We stopped near the edge of the ballroom. I could see Caldwell across the room, talking with a group of older executives. When will we be okay again? Marcus asked. You and me? I looked at my son. Hope and fear mingled in his expression. That's the wrong question, I said gently. What? The right question isn't when we'll be okay. It's who are you going to become? Answer that question through your actions and we'll be more than okay. He thought about that. So I just live differently? Yes. You stop asking when you've done enough and start asking who you're being. You stop performing and start existing. You stop measuring yourself against everyone else's highlight reel and start building something real. A waiter passed by with champagne. Marcus reached for a glass, then stopped himself, dropped his hand. Small choice, but the right one. I want you to be proud of me again, he said. I never stopped being proud of you. I'm disappointed in the choice you made. That's different. You're still my son, still the person I've poured my life into. But tonight you showed me, and yourself, that you still have growing to do. I'm 34 years old. I'm 68 and I'm still growing. It never stops, son. The day you think you've arrived is the day you stop moving forward. Someone approached us then, a man in his 40s, expensive suit, friendly smile. Excuse me, he said, looking at Marcus. I just wanted to say that took guts, what you did back there. Not many people can face something like that publicly. Marcus looked uncomfortable. I'm not sure guts is the right word. Well, I respect it. The man extended his hand. Dennis Harrington. I run the commercial lending division. Marcus shook his hand. Marcus Henderson. Dennis turned to me, hand extended. And you must be? Marcus glanced at me. This was the moment. The test. This is my father, Marcus said. His voice was clear, firm, proud. Robert Henderson. He built Henderson Industrial Solutions. Dennis's eyebrows rose. No kidding? We've used your reports in our lending decisions. Your manufacturing efficiency metrics are industry standard. Thank you, I said, shaking his hand. Dennis chatted for another minute, then excused himself. As he walked away, I looked at Marcus. He was standing straighter. His expression was different, not the desperate eagerness from earlier. Something calmer, more authentic. That felt good, he said quietly. That's because it was true. Truth always feels better than performance, even when it's harder. He nodded. I need to find Mr. Caldwell. Yes, you do. Will you come with me? I considered that. He needed to do this himself, to take responsibility without me there as a buffer. But he'd asked, not demanded, not assumed. I asked. Yes, I said, but you do the talking. Deal. We started walking across the ballroom together, side by side, father and son. And for the first time all evening, Marcus looked like he belonged, not because he was impressing anyone, but because he was finally being himself. Watching Marcus own his mistake without excuses, that's when I knew there was hope. We found Caldwell near the bar, alone for a moment. He saw us approaching, and his expression shifted, guarded but not hostile, waiting to see what would happen next. Mr. Caldwell, Marcus said, voice steady but humble. May I speak with you? Caldwell nodded. Of course. Marcus took a breath. I stayed beside him, but slightly back. This was his moment. Sir, I want to apologize, Marcus said. Not for embarrassing myself, not for causing a scene, but for disrespecting my father, and by extension, you and the values you're trying to build in this company. Caldwell listened, face unreadable. I was wrong, Marcus continued. I let fear and insecurity drive me to deny the most important person in my life. I prioritized appearances over truth. That's not the kind of man I want to be. It's not the kind of employee Caldwell and Cross should have. The last sentence hung in the air. Marcus had just put his job on the line. Caldwell studied him for a long moment. Are you offering your resignation? No, sir, but I would understand if you asked for it. I see. Caldwell glanced at me, then back at Marcus. What you did tonight was unacceptable. It violated the principles this firm was built on. Integrity, respect, authenticity. Marcus nodded, accepting the judgment. However, Caldwell continued, I've also watched you face those consequences with more maturity than most men twice your age. That counts for something. Relief flickered across Marcus's face, but he kept his expression controlled. Here's what's going to happen, Caldwell said. You'll write me a formal letter outlining what you learned tonight and how you plan to apply those lessons moving forward. Personal and professional development. I want specifics, not platitudes. Yes, sir. Additionally, you'll join me for lunch next week. You and your father. He looked at me. I'd like to discuss Henderson Industrial's manufacturing processes in detail. Consider it professional development and an opportunity for Marcus to see his father in a different context. I nodded. I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, Marcus said. I won't let you down. See that you don't. Caldwell's expression softened slightly. Marcus, you're a talented analyst, but talent without character is just potential waiting to be wasted. Tonight you showed me your character needs work. Do the work. I will. Caldwell extended his hand to Marcus. They shook. Then Caldwell turned to me, offering his hand as well. Thank you, he said quietly, for handling this with grace. Your son is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him, I replied, even on his worst days. Caldwell smiled. That's what good fathers say. He clapped me gently on the shoulder. Enjoy the rest of your evening. He walked away, rejoining the crowd. Marcus exhaled slowly, tension draining from his shoulders. I thought he was going to fire me. He considered it, I said, but he also saw you take responsibility. That mattered. I have a lot of work to do. Yes, you do, but that's good. Work means growth. Stagnation is what you should fear, not effort. Marcus looked around the ballroom. The gala was winding down. People were finishing dessert, some already saying their goodbyes. I think I'm ready to leave, he said. Good idea. We walked toward the exit together. A few people nodded at us as we passed. One older woman smiled warmly at me. A younger man gave Marcus a respectful nod. The judgment was still there. The whispers would continue for weeks, but there was also something else. A sense that Marcus had handled himself well after the initial disaster, that he'd shown character when it counted. We stepped outside into the cool evening air. The harbor stretched out before us, dark water reflecting city lights. Marcus took a deep breath. Thank you for staying, for not walking out when I gave you every reason to. You're my son. I'm not walking out on you, even after what I did, especially after what you did. That's when you needed me most. We walked to the parking lot in comfortable silence, found the Mercedes, got in. I started the engine. Marcus settled into the passenger seat, exhausted but somehow lighter than he'd been at the start of the evening. As I pulled out of the lot, Marcus said quietly, I love you, Dad. I love you too, son. And I meant it. Despite everything. Because of everything. That's what love is. Seeing someone at their worst and choosing them anyway. Sometimes the quietest conversations are the loudest lessons. We drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. Just the hum of the engine, the occasional sweep of headlights from oncoming cars, the soft sound of tires on asphalt. Marcus stared out the passenger window at the passing city lights. I kept my eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. I didn't push. Sometimes silence is what people need. Space to think, to process, to simply be without performing. We were crossing the Ashley River Bridge when Marcus finally spoke. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked quietly. "About your involvement with Caldwell and Cross, about who you are in that world." I thought about that. Pride, maybe, or fear. Fear of what? That you'd respect me for the wrong reasons, for being successful instead of for being your father, for having money instead of for having character. I glanced over at him. "I wanted you to know me as the man who raised you, not as the man who invested wisely." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I did respect you, Dad. I do. Somewhere along the way, I got lost." "I know. How do you know?" "Because I was young once, too. I made mistakes. Different ones than yours, but mistakes all the same. I understand what it's like to lose sight of what matters." The city lights faded behind us as we headed toward the residential neighborhoods. The streets were quieter here, darker. "That's the nature of pride," I continued. "It makes you forget what's real until you've already hurt the people you love. It convinces you that image matters more than substance, that what people think of you is more important than who you actually are." Marcus nodded slowly. "I became exactly what you warned me against." "Yes, but you also recognized it. That's the difference between a mistake and a pattern. Mistakes you learn from. Patterns you become trapped in." We stopped at a red light. An elderly couple crossed the street in front of us, holding hands, moving slowly. The man steadied the woman when she stumbled slightly on the curb. Marcus watched them. "Do you think Mom would be disappointed in me?" The question caught me off guard. We didn't talk about Eleanor often. It was too painful for both of us. "Yes," I said honestly. "She would be disappointed." Marcus flinched. "But," I continued, "she'd also be hopeful. Watching you own your mistake tonight, watching you face the consequences, she'd see that as the beginning of something better. Your mother believed in second chances. She believed people could change." "Did she?" Marcus's voice was small. "I don't remember that about her. You were 12 when she died. There's a lot you don't remember. But I do." I smiled slightly. "She once told me that the measure of a person isn't their worst moment. It's what they do after." "What did I do after?" "You broke. You told the truth. You asked how to be better." I paused. That would have made her proud. The light turned green. I drove forward and we lapsed into silence again. But this silence felt different, less heavy, more peaceful. A few minutes later, Marcus said, "I'm glad you stayed tonight. Where else would I be? Home, away from the humiliation, away from me." "Marcus, you're my son. I don't run from you when things get hard. That's not what fathers do. Some fathers do, not this one." We pulled into my driveway. I put the car in park but didn't turn off the engine. Marcus would need to get his BMW from the shop tomorrow, but tonight he'd stay with me. We'd already decided that silently. Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt, but didn't move to get out. "Thank you," he said, "for everything, for staying, for teaching me, for not giving up on me." "I'll never give up on you," I said, "even when you give me reasons to." He smiled weakly. "That's a dangerous promise." "It's the only one I know how to make." We got out of the car. We walked up to the house together. Inside, I turned on the lights while Marcus collapsed onto the couch in the living room. "You hungry?" I asked. "No, just tired." "Then sleep. We'll talk more tomorrow." He nodded, already closing his eyes. I covered him with the blanket Eleanor used to keep on the back of the couch, blue and white, slightly faded. It still smelled like her, somehow, even after all these years. Marcus pulled it up to his chin, eyes still closed. "Love you, Dad. Love you too, son." I turned off the lights and went upstairs, leaving him to sleep. Tomorrow we'll start rebuilding, but tonight we'd simply survived. And sometimes survival is enough. Healing didn't announce itself with trumpets. It showed up in weekly phone calls and quiet Sunday dinners. The letter arrived 4 days later, not emailed, hand-delivered to Caldwell's office, the way important things should be. Marcus called to tell me he'd sent it, asked if I wanted to read a copy. I did. 3 pages, handwritten, no corporate jargon, No deflection or excuse-making, just honest reflection about pride, fear, and the slow erosion of values when ambition goes unchecked. He wrote about watching me work growing up, about the lessons I'd tried to teach, about how he'd heard the words but missed the meaning until it was almost too late. The letter ended simply, "I want to be the kind of man my father raised me to be. I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it." I called him after reading it. "It's good," I said. "Honest. Do you think Caldwell will accept it?" "I think he already has. But that's not really the point, is it? You didn't write it for him. You wrote it for yourself." Silence on the other end. Then, "Yeah, I guess I did." The phone calls started coming more frequently after that. Not every day, but twice a week, maybe 3 times, sometimes just 5 minutes. "Hey, Dad, how are you? How's the knee?" Other times longer. Conversations about work, about frustrations, about trying to navigate office politics without compromising himself. I listened more than I talked. That's what he needed. Someone to hear him without judging, without lecturing, without saying, "I told you so." The lunch with Caldwell happened 2 weeks after the gala. Marcus picked me up, drove us both to the restaurant, an upscale steakhouse downtown. We arrived early. Marcus was nervous. "Relax," I told him. "James isn't trying to punish you. He's trying to teach you. What if I say something stupid? Then you'll learn from it and move on." Caldwell arrived exactly on time, shook both our hands, ordered a scotch. We talked about manufacturing processes, supply chain optimization, the challenges of scaling operations in an uncertain economy. Marcus asked questions, real ones, not performing for the boss questions, but genuine curiosity about how things worked, about the decisions that went into building something sustainable. At one point, Caldwell said to Marcus, "You know, your father taught me something years ago that I've never forgotten." He said, "The businesses that survive aren't the ones that chase trends. They're the ones that solve real problems consistently." Marcus looked at me. "You said that? Something like that?" "He also said," Caldwell continued, "that leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about making the smartest person in the room feel heard." Marcus absorbed that. Wrote it down on a napkin, actually. I saw him fold the napkin and put it in his jacket pocket when Caldwell wasn't looking. The lunch lasted 2 hours. When we left, Caldwell pulled Marcus aside. I heard him say, "You're doing good work. Keep at it." Marcus practically glowed on the drive home. 3 weeks after the gala, Marcus drove down to Charleston on a Sunday. Showed up unannounced around 5 in the evening. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he said when I opened the door. "You're not. Come in." We made dinner together. Nothing fancy. Spaghetti with marinara, garlic bread, salad. He chopped vegetables while I boiled water. We moved around the kitchen like we used to when he was a teenager. That familiar choreography of shared space. Over dinner, he told me about work, about a difficult client who kept changing requirements, about a colleague who was undermining him, about the pressure to bill more hours, bring in more business, prove his worth constantly. I listened, didn't offer solutions unless he asked. Just let him talk. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "Running the company?" "Sometimes. I miss problem solving, the satisfaction of finding elegant solutions to complex challenges." I paused. "But I don't miss the stress, or politics, or the feeling that I always had to prove something." "How did you let go of that? The need to prove yourself?" "By realizing that the people whose opinions actually mattered already knew my worth, and the people who didn't know weren't worth proving anything to." He thought about that while chewing his garlic bread. "That's hard to do," he said finally. "It is, but it's also freeing." We talked until almost midnight. Then he drove home, promising to call during the week. And he did call, Wednesday evening, just to check in. The distance between us, the gap that had opened that night at the gala, began to shrink. Not all at once, not with dramatic declarations or grand gestures, but slowly, steadily, through phone calls and dinners and honest conversations. Trust doesn't return overnight, but it does return if you do the work. And Marcus was doing the work. My son didn't just learn to introduce me properly. He learned what deserves honor and what deserves shame. 3 months after the gala, Marcus called with a request. Caldwell & Cross is doing quarterly presentations for major clients and partners, he said. I'm presenting on the manufacturing portfolio. Would you come? Not as a shareholder, just as my father. You sure you want me there? I'm sure. I want to do it right this time. I agreed. The presentation was held in Caldwell & Cross's main conference room. Sleek, modern, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. About 30 people in attendance. Clients, senior executives, a few board members. Marcus presented confidently, clearly. No false bravado, no desperate eagerness. Just competent analysis delivered with quiet authority. When he finished, people applauded, asked thoughtful questions. He answered well. Afterward, during the networking portion, Marcus made his way to where I stood near the windows. How'd I do? He asked. You did well. Your analysis was solid. The presentation was clear. Thanks. He smiled. There are some people I'd like you to meet. We moved through the crowd together. At each introduction, Marcus said the same thing, variations on a theme. This is my father, Robert Henderson. He built Henderson Industrial Solutions. He taught me everything important I know. Not everything I know. Everything is important. The distinction mattered. People shook my hand with genuine respect. Some knew my company's reputation. Others didn't. But they respected the pride in Marcus's voice when he introduced me. One older gentleman, a board member I learned later, said to Marcus, "Your father must be proud of you." Marcus glanced at me. "I hope so." "I am," I said simply. The man smiled and moved on. When the crowd thinned, Marcus and I stepped out onto a small balcony overlooking the harbor. The afternoon sun was warm. Boats moved slowly across the water. "Thank you for coming," Marcus said. "Thank you for inviting me." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, "You know what I learned that night, at the gala?" "What?" "It's not that I should never be embarrassed. It's that I should be embarrassed by the right things." He looked at me. "I should be embarrassed by dishonesty, not by love, by betrayal, not by heritage, by who I pretend to be, not by who I actually am." I felt something tighten in my chest. Pride, relief, hope. "That's exactly right," I said. He smiled. "Took me long enough to figure it out. Better late than never. Better not to need to figure it out at all. Maybe. But sometimes we need to break something to understand its value. You had to break our relationship to realize what it meant. I don't ever want to break it again. Then don't. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep showing up. Keep being honest. Keep choosing substance over image." He nodded. "I can do that." We stood there a while longer, watching the water. Father and son. Not perfect, but real. Not without scars, but healing. Eventually, we went back inside, said our goodbyes. We walked to the parking garage together. "Same time next week?" Marcus asked. "Dinner at your place? I'll make the spaghetti. I'll bring the wine." We shook hands. Then, almost as an afterthought, Marcus pulled me into a hug. Brief, but firm. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, son." I watched him drive away, then got into my own car. The afternoon sun slanted through the windshield. The harbor sparkled in the distance, and I realized something. We were going to be okay. Not because the past was erased, not because the hurt was forgotten, but because we'd faced it together. I worked through it honestly, and we chose each other even when it was hard. That's what family is, not perfection, not the absence of mistakes, just people who keep choosing each other, over and over, through every failure and triumph. That's what lasts. Your story might be different from mine, but the lesson is the same. We hurt most of the people we should honor most. I've been thinking a lot since that night at the gala, about what happened, about what it meant, about whether sharing this story might help someone else avoid the same mistakes. And since I started telling people about it, the messages have come pouring in. A father from Ohio wrote to me, said his daughter, a lawyer at a prestigious firm, introduced him as a friend at her office holiday party. He'd driven 6 hours to see her, stood there smiling while she lied to her colleagues about who he was. He left early, hasn't talked to her since. That was 2 years ago. A son from California admitted he'd been embarrassed by his immigrant parents. They spoke with heavy accents, ran a small dry cleaning business. When his college friends would visit, He'd meet them at coffee shops instead of bringing them home. His parents never said anything, but they knew, and it hurt them in ways he's only now beginning to understand. Another father told me his son had asked him not to attend his wedding, said it would be too complicated to explain the family situation to his new in-laws. The father stayed home, watched his son get married through photos on Facebook, still wonders what he did wrong. These stories break my heart, because I see the same pattern in all of them. Pride, shame, the desperate need to be something other than what we are. And in that desperation, we sacrifice the people who loved us first. If you're watching this and you relate to Marcus, if you've distanced yourself from your parents because they don't fit the image you want to project, I'm asking you to do something. Pick up the phone. Call them. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Tell them you're sorry. Tell them you've been wrong. Tell them they matter more than your reputation. They won't be around forever. And when they're gone, you'll trade every corner office, every impressive title, every moment of approval from strangers for one more conversation with them. Don't wait until it's too late. And if you're a father watching this, relating to my side of the story, if your child has pushed you away, dismissed you, treated you like you don't matter, I want you to know something. Be patient. People can change. Marcus changed. It took a crisis. It had consequences. It took him hitting rock bottom and having to look at himself honestly. But he changed. Your child might change too. They might realize what they've lost. They might come back. But even if they don't, you still have value. Your worth isn't determined by whether your children appreciate you. You are more than your relationship with them. Hold on to that. Hold on to your dignity. Keep being the person you raised them to be, even if they're not living up to those standards yet. Sometimes the best thing we can do is simply be there when they're ready. I want to ask you something. Have you experienced something similar? Maybe you're the parent who's been dismissed. Maybe you're the child who's been embarrassed by where you came from. Maybe you're somewhere in between, trying to figure out how to honor your past while building your future. Share your story in the comments. Not for me, for each other, because I've learned something through this. We're not alone in these struggles. Every generation faces them. Every family navigates them differently. But the more we talk about it, the more we acknowledge that pride and shame are universal human experiences, the better chance we have of recognizing these patterns before they destroy what matters most. Your story matters. Your experience matters. And someone watching this needs to hear it. So share it. Be honest. Be vulnerable. Help someone else avoid the mistakes you've made or survive the hurt you felt. That's how we build something better. Together. I taught my son to hide weakness. I shouldn't be surprised when he hid me. If I could go back and talk to my 40-year-old self, the man raising young Marcus alone, working 18-hour days, trying to be both mother and father, I'd say this: let him see you struggle. I spent so many years shielding Marcus from everything, from my exhaustion, from my doubts, from my grief over losing Eleanor, from the pressure of keeping a business afloat while raising a child alone. I thought I was being strong, though I was teaching him resilience by example, never complaining, never admitting when things were hard, never letting him see me cry or doubt or feel overwhelmed. I was wrong. What I actually taught him was that real men don't have problems. They just solve them silently. That strength means never showing weakness. That love means performing in vulnerability even when you're falling apart inside. That's a lonely way to live, and it's exactly how Marcus was living when he denied me at that gala. He'd learned from me that you hide the parts of yourself that don't fit the image you want to project. I hid my pain. He hid me. We teach what we live, not what we lecture. I can tell my son 1,000 times that character matters more than appearances, but if he watches me carefully managing my image, never admitting struggle, never asking for help, never letting anyone see behind the facade, well, he's learning something entirely different. He's learning that what matters is looking strong, not being honest. I remember when Marcus was 15. We'd just lost a major client. Not my fault. They went bankrupt. but it put serious financial pressure on the company. I was stressed, worried about making payroll, worried about having to lay people off. Marcus asked me one evening if everything was okay. I was sitting at the kitchen table, going through financial projections, running numbers for the 100th time. "Everything's fine," I told him. "Just work stuff. Nothing to worry about." He went back to his homework, and I went back to my spreadsheets, alone with my anxiety. I should have said, "Actually, things are tough right now. I'm worried, but I'm working on solutions, and we'll get through it." That would have taught him that struggle is normal, that honesty is strength, that you can admit difficulty without falling apart. Instead, I taught him to lie, to perform, to never let anyone see the cracks. Is it any wonder he performed at that gala? That he constructed an image and protected it at all costs? That he sacrificed truth for the sake of appearing flawless? He learned it from me. I don't say this to excuse what he did. He's responsible for his choices, but I can't pretend I didn't contribute to the man he became, to the insecurities that drove him to deny his own father. If I'd been more honest about my struggles, maybe he would have felt safe being honest about his. If I'd admitted my fears and doubts, maybe he wouldn't have felt like he needed to be perfect all the time. Maybe he would have introduced me proudly at that gala, not because I was successful, but because I was real, because I'd shown him that real is better than impressive. But I didn't know that at 40. I was just trying to survive, trying to be enough for a child who'd lost his mother, trying to build a business and a life and a sense of stability out of grief and chaos. I did the best I could with what I knew, but I wish I'd known more. I wish I'd understood that vulnerability isn't weakness, that letting your children see you struggle teaches them it's okay to struggle too, that the greatest gift you can give them isn't a perfect example, but an honest one. So that's what I'd tell my younger self. Be real. Be honest. Let him see you cry sometimes. Let him know when you're afraid. Ask for his help even with small things, so he learns that needing people is normal, not shameful. Teach him that strength isn't the absence of weakness. It's the courage to be honest about it. I can't go back and do it differently, but I can acknowledge my part in how things turned out. I can take responsibility for the lessons I taught unintentionally, and I can try to teach better lessons moving forward. That's all any of us can do. Learn, grow, do better tomorrow than we did yesterday. Even at 68, I'm still learning. I hope I never stop. The night he called me his driver, I thought I'd lost my son. Instead, I found a better relationship than we'd ever had. Marcus called me last week with an idea. "Dad, how would you feel about taking a trip? Just you and me. Maybe 2 weeks in Scotland." Scotland, where my grandfather emigrated from in 1923. A place I'd always wanted to visit but never made time for. "Why Scotland?" I asked. "Because I want to see where we come from. I want to understand the full story, not just the parts I found comfortable or impressive, but all of it. The struggles, the immigration, the building from nothing, our actual history." I was quiet for a moment, feeling something tighten in my chest. "I'd like that," I said. "We're planning it now. 2 weeks in September. We'll trace family history, visit the villages my grandfather came from, maybe play some golf." Marcus is researching everything: genealogy records, historical sites, distant cousins we might still have there. He's excited about it, more excited than I've seen him about anything in years, and I never thought we'd be here. 3 months ago, standing in that ballroom, watching my son deny my existence, I thought I'd lost him. Not physically, but the connection, the trust, the relationship that mattered more to me than anything else in the world. I thought that night had broken something that couldn't be fixed. But here's what I've learned. Rock bottom can be a foundation if you're willing to build on it. That night at the gala was Marcus's rock bottom. Mine too, in a different way. We both had to face hard truths about ourselves, about what we'd become, about what we were risking. And instead of walking away from that wreckage, we chose to build on it. But, and this is important, reconciliation requires both parties willing to do the work. I had to forgive, genuinely forgive, not just say the words while holding on to resentment. I had to let go of the hurt and choose to believe Marcus could change. That was hard, because forgiveness doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means you carry it without letting it poison everything else. And Marcus had to change. Actually change, not just feel bad for a while and then slip back into old patterns. He had to examine why he did what he did. He had to confront his insecurities. He had to choose differently every single day, even when it was uncomfortable. Both were necessary. One without the other wouldn't have worked. If I'd forgiven but he hadn't changed, we'd just be repeating the same cycle. If he'd changed but I'd held on to bitterness, the distance between us would have remained. Healing required both of us moving toward each other. I want to be clear about something. Not every story ends this way. Some relationships don't survive betrayals like this. Some children never come back. Some parents can't forgive. Some wounds run too deep. I'm not suggesting everyone can or should reconcile. Sometimes the healthiest thing is distance. Sometimes people aren't willing to change. Sometimes forgiveness means releasing someone rather than rebuilding with them. But I also think more relationships could survive than actually do. More reconciliations could happen if both parties were willing to be honest, vulnerable, and committed to growth. We give up too easily sometimes. We walk away from repairable damage because repair is hard and uncomfortable and requires us to look at ourselves honestly. Marcus and I could have let that night at the gala be the end. He could have been too ashamed to face me again. I could have been too hurt to give him another chance. But we didn't. We chose the hard path, the uncomfortable conversations, the gradual rebuilding of trust, the honest examination of our failures. And what we have now, this relationship we're building, this trip we're planning, this genuine connection, is better than what we had before. Before, we were polite, distant, going through the motions of being father and son without real intimacy. Now we're honest. We talk about real things. We challenge each other. We're building something authentic instead of just maintaining something comfortable. The crisis forced us into honesty, and that honesty created a connection. So if you're in a broken relationship right now, with a parent, a child, a sibling, and you're wondering if it's worth trying to fix, I can't answer that for you. But I can tell you this. The relationship I almost lost is now the relationship I'm most grateful for. The night that almost destroyed us became the foundation for something stronger. And if we can do it, maybe you can too. It won't be easy. It won't be quick, but it might be worth it. Only you can decide.